All right, welcome into NBA Now live here on Chat Sports. I am your host, Chase Sr. Give me a follow on Twitter at Chase_Sr. I hope everybody out there is having a fantastic week, and you must be in a good mood because it's almost the weekend, and we are about to have a jam-packed show here on YouTube. A ton of stuff to get into. We're going to get into the latest news and rumors across the NBA. We're going to do 2 mailbags so all of you can interact with me, hop on board and join the show. And we're cooking up something nice for you, our first NBA lottery mock draft. But before we get started and before we get all of that, let's build up the audience a little bit. I see some people waiting in the chat, so let me know where you're all watching from, and I'm going to give you some shout outs. So shout out your city, shout out your state, wherever you're tuned in from, let me know, and we'll get some shout outs going. Josh, watching from New York. Andrew, tuned in from California. Joseph from Ireland. Shout out to Ireland. Cash out Isaiah, I see you. Tuned in from Orlando. Iron Tiger, watching from St. Louis, Missouri. Untouchable Raider from LA. Love LA. Spent a summer of 2014 out there. Elliot Kish, watching and rocking with us from Cleveland. Andrew Gonzalez from California. Josh from New York. We're coming to you from Dallas. So weather is always beautiful down here. As you know, I'm somewhat new here at Chat Sports. Love interacting with all of you, so hop in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. Got a bunch of people watching from all over the entire country, all over the world. We have somebody tuned in from Ireland. Desmond Malloy, hi Philadelphia. I grew up in Westchester, right outside of Philadelphia, so shout out to the hometown. And Nicholas Allen watching us from England. So people spread out across the United States and across the globe watching us here, NBA Now live on YouTube. So you tuned in because you want to talk some basketball, you want to hear some basketball chatter about what's happening across the league, and you want to find out who is going in our NBA lottery mock draft. But if you want to stay up to date with the latest news that's happening in your city, in your county, in your zip code, head to chatsports.com/newsbreak and support one of our sponsors, because you can get the latest on news happening in your neighborhood, politics, sports, really anything that's going on in the world. Newsbreak is going to bring you the latest, and it's all very hyper local. So hey, if you're watching from Winnipeg like Sadner Singh, hop onto the Newsbreak app and you can find out all of the happenings that's going on in Winnipeg. Or if you're in San Bernardino, California like Thomas Shaughnessy, you go onto the Newsbreak app and all you have to do is enter your location, and basically it filters everything that's happening hyper local to you. So again, that's chatsports.com/newsbreak. It is now April 2nd. Yesterday was April 1st. So I want to pose this question for you. And hop into the chat. Let me know if you guys got fooled for April Fools. Type Y for yes and type N for no. You can even kind of extend on that and let me know exactly what happened to you. So to take you inside the offices here at Chat Sports, yesterday morning, we're hanging out, getting ready for the day, stacking up our shows, and news breaks that Roy Williams, the legendary North Carolina head coach, is going to retire. And everybody had like that moment of hesitation because we're like, wait, is this real or is it an April Fool's joke? And then it came from the University of North Carolina, a statement. We realized it was true, and we put out a video on our main channel here at Chat Sports. So we weren't necessarily fooled, but we did have some hesitation. So let me know why for yes if you were fooled on April Fool's, and for no. It looks like a couple people, Donovan, he got fooled on April Fool's. Josh typing Y. Corey Childs typing Y as well. I didn't fall for really anything. And this was like the first time that I kind of had to put my guard up a little bit. And I was like, I am not falling for an April Fool's joke this year. I will tell you this, though. My girlfriend DM'd me on Instagram last night and basically said, like, mentioned you in their story as an actual text. So I opened up IG, looked at the DM, and I'm like, you didn't mention me in a story? Oh, wait, you got me. So I guess I did get got on April Fools. Also, coming up this weekend, I know we're getting to the NBA here in a little bit. Final Four is also happening. Some really good matchups, too. Baylor, Houston, UCLA, Gonzaga. I think these matchups are really intriguing, so let me know who you have in the Final Four. Who's going to march on to the national championship? UCLA, Gonzaga. If it's UCLA, if you're going with the Bruins, type U. If you think it's Gonzaga, type G. Corey Childs going with Gonzaga. Jackson Porter going with Gonzaga. Shanav going with Gonzaga as well. Keegs going with Gonzaga. I'll tell you this, if Mark Few can win a national championship at Gonzaga, is there like a similarity? Like, has that happened before where a guy at a university with an enrollment of under 8,000 builds Gonzaga in Spokane, Washington into a powerhouse like it is today? I'm not sure that's been done before all across sports. That would be awfully impressive. And it looks as though everybody agrees with me because I'm going with the Zags that Gonzaga is going to be victorious. Kid, the first UCLA, and he's all over the chat. He thinks the Bruins under Mick Cronin are going to rise up, pull off the upset, and get to the national championship. Josh, Gonzaga. Sadnor, Singh, Gonzaga. Tony Brown going with UCLA. Well, we have another matchup to get to. The other side of the bracket, Baylor and Houston. Bunch of uber athletes are going to be on the floor for this matchup. And Baylor, they enter big favorites. Kelvin Sampson, though, hell of a job that he's done at the University of Houston, building that program up. I know things didn't work out for him in the past when he tried to take some major gigs across college basketball. He's found his spot at the University of Houston and has them one win away from playing for a national championship. I'm going to type my B for Baylor because I think that team across the board, man, they're maniacs defensively. They're so long. They're so athletic. And as I look at the chat here, Franco going with Baylor. We got some chat sports people going with Houston. Shanav, Oral Roberts, they got knocked out already, although that was a really entertaining run. Jackson Porter is picking Baylor. Corey Childs, once again, going with Houston. William Tabb picking Baylor. Shanav, Oral Roberts is out. I know we were all about that Cinderella fever, but their run came to an end. What, against the University of Arkansas? The RMB bros picking Baylor. Sadner Singh going with Baylor. Abnahav going with Baylor as well. So here's how you can get involved on NBA Now live here on Chat Sports. If you have a question for me, and we're going to do 2 mailbags today, you can either hashtag NBA. That will allow producer Sam to see your question as well as me. Or you can just skip ahead of everybody, and if you super chat us, it can be any dollar amount. Shoot, you can throw cents on the board, but we appreciate dollars. If you super chat us, that will then allow you to jump the line, and we will answer your questions first. Look, we're under 2 months until the end of the NBA regular season. A lot is set to play out. Teams are battling for playoff spots, but one race that I'm watching really closely, the MVP race. I thought it was going to be Joel Embiid before he hurt his knee 3 weeks ago. We're going to talk about him coming up. I thought it was going to be LeBron James before he hurt his ankle, but who knows how long he's going to be out. So the MVP odds have fluctuated across the NBA. It's going to be fascinating to see who rises to the occasion to claim this award because it's a stacked list, and we're going to bring you the betting odds here in a little bit. But my people, my homies, who will win the NBA MVP? Get into the comments and let me know. Shanav going with Jokic. I think the Joker is the front runner right now, not just according to odds makers, but the eye test shows me that as well. Corey Childs going with Stephen Curry. Look, he, like Embiid and LeBron, he also got hurt, so I think that hurt his MVP chances. But I'll tell you this, if the Warriors climb the playoff standings because of Steph's play, and since he got back, he's averaging north of 30 points per game, Steph Curry can win for sure. Coach Dreadhead listing Damian Lillard. I'll tell you this, Coach Dreadhead. Damian Lillard, if he wins the NBA MVP, we're talking about one of the greatest careers for a shooting guard of all time. He's already been like a scoring champion, a first-team All-Pro, a multi-time All-Star. He's hit a bunch of clutch shots. Damian Lillard, the one thing he needs to put on his shelving at his house, an MVP award. So, hey, before we get started, and we're getting closely, we have more than 100 people watching live here as we're rocking and rolling here on this Friday weekend coming up. I want you to help me out. Let's get to 50 likes, at least, before we start the show. We're at 26 likes right now, so everybody watching, get us to 50 likes. This is my first live show by myself. How do you think I'm doing so far? I think I'm rolling along, and I'm really looking forward to getting to everything that we have coming up. But get us to 50 likes, and then we will start today's NBA Now live show here on Chat Sports. Josh Bosch, going back to that MVP conversation, picking James Harden. I'm going to talk about James Harden coming up, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've never been a huge James Harden guy, but James Harden, without KD in the lineup, with Kyrie being spotty because you never know when he's going to play, you never know if he's going to be dependable, James Harden has been unbelievable. Again, 50 likes and we start the show. We have 10 more to go. So hit that thumbs up button down there right below me, and if we get to 50 likes, we will start the show. More MVP choices coming in. Kevin Durant. Yeah, if Kevin Durant, he hasn't played since mid-February. So if he didn't get hurt, I think KD would be in the MVP conversation, no doubt. A couple more people going with KD. We're 6 more likes away from 50. Now we are 2. The countdown is on before we start NBA Now. Let's get it. Who's going to be like number 50? All right, we are over 50 likes on today's show. That means that we can get started here. So coming up on NBA Now live here on Chat Sports, we're going to bring you the latest news and rumors all across the association. And there's a lot of juicy news and rumors happening right now with just a few more weeks left in the regular season. We're going to do 2 mailbags today. So hashtag NBA or Super Chat, that's how I'll see your question. And we'll do 2 live Q&As coming up. And man, I can't wait for this one because I think some people are going to be fired up. We are bringing you our first NBA Lottery mock draft. All of that is coming up now on NBA Now. You're watching NBA Now live here on YouTube. I am Chase Sr., rocking and rolling for my first live show solo. So I appreciate all of you for hopping on board and joining the show. Let's get to the latest news and rumors across the NBA. And we start with some injury news concerning some star players across the NBA. And let's hop in with James Harden. So we missed Thursday's game against the Charlotte Hornets, and that was all due to some hamstring tightness. He exited Wednesday's game against the Rockets, his former team, early. And this isn't an injury that is going to linger for a long time. It's not going to be debilitating at all for James Harden. He is expected to return soon to that Brooklyn Nets lineup, and this has been a guy who's been in the thick of things in the NBA conversation. So James Harden, this injury is not going to keep him out of the lineup, and that's good news for the Brooklyn Nets because KD is still out. Kyrie just missed this last road trip, and because those 2 guys haven't been dependable for the Brooklyn Nets, James Harden, since getting traded to the Nets, has been an MVP caliber player. I've never been a big James Harden guy, but I have to respect and admire what this guy has done with Brooklyn so far this year, averaging more than 26 points per game. He's really getting his teammates involved as well, dishing out more than 11 dimes per. And he's also bringing in around 9 rebounds. I know this is a guy who isn't always engaged on both ends of the floor. He has been more engaged with the Brooklyn Nets, and he's shooting nearly 47% from the floor. So I think James Harden really just needed to get out of Houston. He needed a change of scenery. And since he's been with Brooklyn, he's been playing fantastic basketball. And because of that, he is currently sitting second in the NBA MVP odds. So Nikola Jokic in there at minus 113 right now. He has overtaken LeBron James and Joel Embiid because he's been readily available for the Denver Nuggets. He's been fantastic. So Jokic, number 1 in the NBA MVP odds. James Harden at number 2. Joel Embiid is going to make his return to the Sixers lineup this weekend. He's still at plus 600, which is a decent value buy, but the Sixers went 7-3 in his absence. And then to round out the NBA MVP odds, LeBron at plus 750 and Giannis at plus 800. Now, James Harden was asked, hey, James Harden, you think you're worthy of the MVP this year? I know you're playing alongside Kyrie Irving and you played a few games with Kevin Durant and you're on a loaded squad. Do you think you should be the MVP? Here's what Harden had to say in response to that. He was bluntly honest. He said, quote, "Do I feel like I belong in it? I feel like I am the MVP. I mean, it's just that simple. I don't want to speak individually on myself. I'm just going to leave it at that." So James Harden thinks that he is the MVP of the NBA this year. What do you all think, my people? Hop into the comments. This is your opportunity to join the show. This is an interactive YouTube channel. We love hearing your feedback. We love hearing your answers and your hot takes. So would you vote James Harden for MVP? If so, type V for vote. If you don't think James Harden is MVP, type D for deny. So for me, I think James Harden has been balling this year. And you look at the numbers, that's obvious, right? And I've never been a big James Harden guy. I didn't like how he showed up to training camp well overweight. I didn't like how he forced his way out of Houston. I think his game in the playoffs is sometimes overrated, and it's not as effective because it's very dribble heavy and ball dominant. And James Harden isn't always engaged on the defensive end of the floor. But I have to give credit where credit is due because James Harden has been ridiculous this year, and I think James Harden deserves all of our respect, and he is worthy to be in that MVP discussion. A guy who has won MVP in previous years, that's Kevin Durant. So according to reports, Kevin Durant, who's been out for a little while, is close to returning. He has not played since February 13th, and according to Shams, if we were in the playoffs right now, Durant would probably be on the floor and healthy, but a little insight into that Brooklyn Nets organization, they are really cautious about the injuries to their players. And when KD comes back and he pairs alongside James Harden and Kyrie, my goodness, what a trio. It's probably the best big three in the NBA as it stands right now, averaging 29 points per game coming off that Achilles tear, more than 7 rebounds. And KD has always been a high volume shooter. He has also always shot really well from the floor. He's doing that again this year, shooting around 52% from the deck. So Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, what a trio there in Brooklyn, and Kevin Durant is set to make his return to that Brooklyn Nets lineup here soon. So watching live right now, we have close to 200 people. 59 people have liked this video. If you miss KD, this is what I want you to do. You see that thumbs up icon right below me? Smash that if you miss Kevin Durant. Let's transition to Joel Embiid because like Harden, like KD, he's been hurt as well. Embiid expected to return Saturday against the Minnesota Timberwolves. He has missed the last 3 weeks with a bone bruise in his knee, and for the Sixers, they escaped disaster because he came down from a dunk against the Washington Wizards, and that injury looked really ugly. And he was in the MVP discussion, still is, but not in first place like he was when he did get injured. And a lot of people expected the Sixers to flop. They did not in Joel Embiid's absence. 7-3 without the all-star big man. So Sixers able to survive without him. They're currently number 2 in the Eastern Conference standings, and maybe they can overtake the aforementioned Brooklyn Nets when Embiid comes back this weekend because he has been lighting it up. And I think Joel Embiid this year is really defying modern-day basketball logic. You don't see 7+ footers move like he does or do what he does on the basketball court, and you don't see 7+ footers put up the numbers that he is putting up this year. You can talk about the Joker all you want. Embiid, when he's on the floor, which is of course the concern, has been the best center in the league, and my guy is averaging almost 30 points per game. So Joel Embiid lighting it up, a double-double consistently, and on the defensive end of the floor, I think he gives you more than the Joker. So since Joel Embiid has been out, he has slipped in the MVP odds, as we showed you there a couple minutes ago. Do you still think that even though Joel Embiid has been out of the lineup, he can win the MVP award? If you think he can, type a W in the comments for Joel Embiid can win MVP. If you think he lost it, then type L for he lost the race. Let's take a gander at the Eastern Conference standings right now. The Brooklyn Nets humming along at 34-15. The Sixers right on their heels. They've been flip-flopping and seesawing over the last couple of weeks. The Sixers are 33-15. The Milwaukee Bucks have been playing great basketball over the last couple of weeks. They've soared up the standings. They're 30-17. The Hornets, one of the best stories in the NBA this year, at 24-23. The Heat, Man, they've been up and down. They were slow, they were hot, they were slow, they cooled off. They're 25 and 24. And as we round out the Eastern Conference playoff standings, the Knicks, another bright story in the NBA this season at 24 and 24. The Hawks in 7th place. They've dropped down and they've gotten colder over the last couple of games. They're now 500 at 24 and 24. It just doesn't make sense to me what has happened to the Boston Celtics this year. How are the Celtics with that lineup, with Tatum, with Brown, with Brad Stevens, 23 and 25, collapsing late in games? It doesn't make sense to me, but they're in at 8th place. And then to round out the Eastern Conference playoff standings, the Pacers are 9th at 21 and 25. And the Chicago Bulls, they appeared to be winners on NBA trade deadline day, trading for Nikola Vucevic. They have lost 5 in a row, dropping to 10th in the Eastern Conference standings. They are 19 and 27. Let's get to a familiar name who's been on the block for a while, not playing in the NBA, and his kind of downslope in his career has been really unfortunate because of injuries. That's Isaiah Thomas. According to Shams, Thomas is signing a 10-day deal with the New Orleans Pelicans. So a guy who has not been playing so far this year, played for the Wizards last year, is going to get an opportunity to prove himself with a 10-day prove-it deal with the New Orleans Pelicans, who honestly could use a two-guard at the scoring spot, and that's what Isaiah Thomas has shown the propensity to do throughout his NBA career. As I mentioned, hasn't played this season, and injuries have really derailed what was once a promising and very exciting story and career for the little guy who in Boston a couple years ago, 2016-17, was in the MVP discussion. Look at these numbers. It's hard to realize and fathom that in 2016-17, Isaiah Thomas was putting up numbers like this at his size of like 5'7", 5'8", and that might be generous. 28.9 points per game, dishing out almost 6 dimes per, shooting 46% from the floor, and he was an above-average three-point shooter at his size, which is incredible. But as I mentioned, that hip injury really started the downslope for Isaiah Thomas. From 2017 till last year, the numbers have dipped significantly from that magical season a few years ago. Under 13 per, under 4 assists, and the field goal and three-point percentage not where you'd like it to be for a guy who was once efficient and given his size and position needs to be more efficient than those numbers from the field and from beyond the arc. I don't know, guys. I'm undecided on this. Do you think Isaiah Thomas can still play? I've watched some tape of him playing some pickup. It looks like he has a little burst, but the athletes he's going up against in pickup games, much different than the style of play and the pace of play in the NBA. I'm going to go ahead and type my N for no because I think Isaiah Thomas might be washed, but let me know. Type Y for yes or type N for no. A lot of teams are expected to be busy on the NBA buyout market, and could Avery Bradley be a free agent if he is bought out by the Houston Rockets? According to Dave McMenamin of ESPN, the Lakers have interest in bringing Avery Bradley back, who was on the team last year, opted out of the COVID bubble. And this is a guy who can knock down threes and defend. He was traded to Houston in that Victor Oladipo deal, is currently in the cellar that is the Houston Rockets right now. And according to some reports, not only are the Lakers interested in Avery Bradley, but if he is indeed bought out, a team like the Boston Celtics could inquire about his services as well on the free agent market. This is what I like about Avery Bradley's game. He's 30 years old right now. It seems as though he's been in the league forever. He's on that Perry Ellis flow. But for a playoff team, Avery Bradley can hit threes. He can defend. And when I mention him being able to close out games, I'm not talking about Avery Bradley being a guy who can facilitate the offense, run the offense, break you down off the dribble and hit shots and step backs or anything like that. But Avery Bradley, because of his ability to knock down threes and defend, can be a part of a starting five for a playoff team coming down the stretch here. You look at what he's done throughout his career, because the sample size this year is somewhat small because he hasn't played all that much. He's been a pretty productive player, and Avery Bradley is a guy who has a bunch of playoff experience. He's played almost 50 playoff games in his career, and for a playoff squad, that veteran experience is definitely valuable. But hey, hitting threes, knocking down some shots, most importantly, defending, Avery Bradley can bring a lot to a playoff team if he is bought out by the Houston Rockets. So which team is the best option for Avery Bradley? I threw out the Lakers. I threw out the Celtics. No, I'm not trying to get people arguing here in the comments right now because this is the best rivalry in the NBA, but these are the two reported teams that could be interested in Avery Bradley, and he played for both squads earlier on in his career. So type C if you think the Celtics is the best fit for Avery Bradley. Type L if you think it's the Lakers. Let's get to the latest news and rumors surrounding the Boston Celtics. And this happened yesterday. No, it was not an April Fool's joke. Roy Williams, the legendary college basketball coach, most recently at the University of North Carolina, retired after nearly 2 decades at the helm of the Tar Heels. He compiled a 903, 264 record over 33 seasons coaching, was known as a fantastic recruiter, a guy who got along with players really well, and won a couple of national championships as well. 3 of them to be exact. 2005, right after he took that North Carolina job, 2009, 2017, and lost to Villanova at the buzzer beater, which would have been his 4th national championship if it wasn't for, bang, Chris Jenkins. So I mentioned Roy Williams because Brad Stevens has been named as a possible rumored candidate to take that North Carolina job. And why is that? Any opening at the college level that is one of the best at the college level, like North Carolina, which is probably the preeminent opening, Brad Stevens is going to be mentioned. Why is that? Well, because Brad Stevens at the college level at Butler was a tremendous coach, and he did shoot down Indiana rumors despite being from the state, going to college in the state, playing D3 ball, and coaching at Butler, which is also in Indiana. But Indiana cannot be compared to North Carolina. Another reason why Brad Stevens is mentioned as a possible candidate for UNC, the Celtics are struggling this year, and their future somewhat uncertain outside of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But you look at the resume for Brad Stevens, and this is why he's linked to any major college opening, because with the Butler Bulldogs from 2007 to 2013, he put a small school on the map, and he is the reason why Butler is now in the Big East. 166-49 from 2007 to 2013, back-to-back Final Fours in 2010 and 2011, put together great recruiting class after great recruiting class, and was able to not only recruit but develop NBA caliber talent like Gordon Hayward and Shelvin Mack. So I think the chances of Brad Stevens leaving the Celtics, it's very, very low. It's very, very slim. But what do you all think? Because this UNC job, it's probably the best across college basketball, and you already know they're going to pay a candidate, I don't know, $6 to $10 million per year, which is more than some NBA coaches make. So what are the chances that Brad Stevens leaves the NBA, leaves the Celtics to go to UNC? If you think the probability is high, type H. If you think it's L, type L for low. I think Brad Stevens right now has a great job. He has 2 bona fide superstars in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. He's working for one of the best franchises in the NBA, one of the most successful, which has one of the most proud traditions across the league. So yeah, you can say that UNC is the best job in college basketball, which it is. That is my opinion. I'll tell you this. At the NBA level, for a competitor, there might not be a better job in the league outside of the Lakers than the Celtics. So I think right now, Brad Stevens is in a good spot. I don't see him leaving the Boston Celtics. A great job for another great job with UNC. So if you want to stay up to date with all of the news, sports, politics, community happenings in your area specifically, I don't care where you live, all across the country, it could even be Boston as well. Head to chatsports.com/newsbreak. So those of you living in the Boston area, if you go to chatsports.com/newsbreak or chatsports.com/CelticsNB and you download the Newsbreak app on your phones, you can plug in and be plugged in to everything happening hyper-locally in your area. So if you live in the city of Boston, you can type in the city of Boston or the zip code, and any local news that's happening, you will be alerted and kept up to date. But if you live on the outskirts, in maybe a township or a town or a borough or something like that, you can also type in your zip code, and anything that's happening in your respective neighborhood, you will be alerted as to what is going on as well. So that's chatsports.com/CelticsNB, and download the Newsbreak app on your phone. Be sure to give us a follow also, our Celtics Today by Chat Sports page on the Newsbreak app. Give us a follow. We're trying to get to like 100 followers, and we have a lot of room to make up in that regard. We're only at 38, so smash that follow button. Give us a like there on the Newsbreak app, Celtics Today by Chat Sports, and do that right now. Let's get into some more Celtics news and rumors here, and we get to Kelly Olynyk. So this is another former Celtic who's been linked to his former squad, currently playing right now for the Houston Rockets. He, like Avery Bradley, was sent to Houston in that deal for Victor Oladipo, and the Celtics have been linked to him if he does get bought out. And this is why, because Brian Scalabrine, who works for NBC Sports Boston, also played in the NBA for a while, was a part of that Celtics championship team with KD, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen, has been texting Kelly Olynyk, two former Celtics, on a text thread together, demanding that Kelly Olynyk go to the Houston Rockets, and tells them, I need a buyout. What would this do for Boston? It would provide depth in Boston's front court. And as we've addressed here on the channel, what is one of the biggest needs, if not the biggest need on the Celtics roster? It's the center position. It is front court depth, because guys like Tristan Thompson, they're not getting it done. They shipped away Daniel Tice, and a guy like Kelly Olynyk could be a great upgrade for this squad. And in 3 games with the Houston Rockets, he's been producing. Yes, it's a small sample size, but Celtics fans have been able to see that Kelly Olynyk, when he's on the floor getting minutes, yes, he can be a bad defensive player at times, but when he's on the floor getting some time, he can be a really solid player. 3 games with Houston, he's averaging more than 18 points per. So this is still a guy who can be a productive player. You might lose a little bit defensively, but you can gain some of that offensively. More than 18 points per game. He can shoot the 3 and spread the floor as well. So I'm interested to ask and get some feedback from some people. Are you down for a Kelly Olynyk reunion with the Boston Celtics? Type R in the comments if you think the Celtics should sign him and you're down for a reunion, or you can type P for pass. Let's move on to the Los Angeles Lakers now, and specifically Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder is going to be a free agent after this season, and he turned down a 4-year, $80 million extension from the Los Angeles Lakers, according to reports, which is just shocking. I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to secure the bag immediately, especially when your future is unknown both financially and with your destination. But that, according to reports, is what Dennis Schroeder turned down. And according to those same reports, that's why Dennis Schroeder was involved in some of those trade discussions for Kyle Lowry in a potential package that would have included Schroeder, KCP, and possibly Talen Horton-Tucker. Now, Rob Pelinka and the Lakers did not decide to make that move and ship Schroeder away, but he was put on the block because, hey, he turned down a monster contract extension that the Lakers thought was pretty good. So Schroeder going to be a free agent after this season, and who knows what happens with his future. This is what we know about the player currently. He hasn't been playing as well with the Lakers this year. Not the same guy that he was last year when he was really putting together a career season. As for teams that could maybe be interested in Dennis Schroeder's services after this season, according to Evan Massey, keep an eye on the Chicago Bulls. They have a point guard in Thomas Satoransky and Kobe White. They're kind of missing a playmaker at the point guard and 2-guard spot. And Evan Massey in this tweet says, one team to keep an eye on for Dennis Schroeder in free agency will be the Chicago Bulls. Source tells at hoopanalysis.net. If they can't find a way to get Lonzo Ball, which I would have loved, Schroeder will likely be a backup option. And this is what Schroeder is doing so far this year with the Los Angeles Lakers. He's been solid but not as good last year, and not really dependable or consistent. Little more than 15 points per game, 5 assists. He's shooting 43% from the floor, which for a point guard who can play the 2 isn't all that great. And he is well below league average from beyond the arc. As compared to last year, yeah, his numbers are down this year as compared to 2019-20, when he really put together a career year and looked like he was on his way to earning a monster contract. I mean, for the Oklahoma City Thunder, he was putting up almost 19 points per. I was really impressed with what Dennis Schroeder did last year, and just hasn't been the same. Now, that could be because he's getting the ball taken away from him by LeBron James and AD when he's not on the floor, when he's on the floor with those guys, rather. But yeah, Dennis Schroeder is set to be a free agent after this year. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to him. Now, I mentioned Dennis Schroeder being in those potential trade talks with a team like the Toronto Raptors for Kyle Lowry. A reason why that deal didn't happen, well, according to some reports, it's because Rob Pelinka did not want to include Talen Horton-Tucker in that deal. This is a guy who was drafted out of Iowa State. He's looked at as a player who has some upside. LeBron James really loves him, but I don't think you don't trade for Kyle Lowry just because you want to hold on to Talen Horton-Tucker. And here's the thing to monitor for the Lakers, and if you're following the Lakers. Talen Horton-Tucker is going to be a restricted free agent after this season. So there's going to be a team in the NBA that offers him somewhere in the range of $10 million probably, right? And the Lakers aren't going to be in a position to match that salary. So I thought it was weird how the Lakers didn't elect to trade for a player like Kyle Lowry, all because they wanted to hold on to Talen Horton-Tucker. I don't think they would have lost much by trading away guys like Dennis Schroeder or KCP in that deal. What do you think about Schroeder's future in LA? If you're a Lakers fan, Laker Nation, speak up. Let me know. Holler at me. Should the Lakers re-sign Dennis Schroeder? If you think they should, type Y for yes. If you don't think they need to, you can type N for no. Andre Drummond made his highly anticipated debut earlier this week for the Lakers, and against the Milwaukee Bucks, it was cut short because he lost his big right toenail because he was stepped on by Brook Lopez. Doesn't sound pleasant at all. Luckily for the Lakers, he's not expected to miss a lot of time. The Lakers are optimistic that Drummond won't miss more than, let's say, a game or two. He did injure his toe, left the game in the third quarter. At halftime, he said he went to the locker room, took his sock off, he looked down, there was no toenail. So, yeah, I'm not trying to gross you out, that's what happened. But the good news is Drummond is going to come back, and without LeBron James and Anthony Davis, that is much welcome news for Frank Vogel and that Lakers brass because they're just trying to keep their heads above water and survive without the services of Andre Drummond because this was a huge pickup for them on the buyout market. They got him in the bargain basement, less than $800,000 from here on out until the end of the regular season, and they brought him in because they think he can be a huge contributor. As for what Andre Drummond did in that debut against the Milwaukee Bucks, very active. The offense ran through him at times. He only played 14 minutes because of that injury. 4 points, 1 rebound, 2 of 6 from the floor. And again, this is a player who is a traditional big man. He's not going to knock down threes. He's not going to spread the floor. He is going to rebound the basketball at an elite clip, and he's a very energetic presence as well. So Drummond going to be back in the Lakers lineup within the next couple of days, and he let everybody know, hey, I'm okay. I'm doing all right. He tweeted this after that game against the Bucks a couple nights ago. Well, I lost a toenail. A couple of emojis, but still felt incredible wearing the purple and gold. I'll be back soon. So you look at the potential lineup that the Lakers could trot out there with a healthy Andre Drummond, it's pretty legit. I think it's one of the best lineups across the NBA. Dennis Schroeder at the 1, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at the 2, LeBron James playing the 3, with Anthony Davis at his natural position at the 4, and Andre Drummond at the 5. Here's what I'm noticing when I look at that lineup. It is a lot of scoring production across the board. Schroeder north of 15 points. KCP can knock down some clutch shots. LeBron James at 36, defying modern-day science, averaging more than 25. Andre Drummond with the Cavaliers was putting together a really good year, 17.5, 13-plus rebounds. And then Anthony Davis, more than 22 points per game. The main focus for the Lakers, you just have to get healthy. And speaking of health for LA, they don't have LeBron for the foreseeable future. Who knows when AD is going to come back. But what is your confidence level in this team without LeBron James and Anthony Davis? Get into the comments and scale it for me from 1 to 10. Let's get to the latest news and rumors on the Golden State Warriors, and I want to touch on a player who we really haven't heard from much so far this season, and that's Spencer Dinwiddie, because he's currently recovering from a partially torn ACL. According to Mark Stein of the New York Times, the Brooklyn Nets looked into trading Spencer Dinwiddie for Kelly Oubre Jr., who we talked a lot about on the channel leading up to the NBA trade deadline. The Warriors did not pull the trigger on this deal because they see Oubre as a vital presence to their playoff push this season. So Kelly Oubre Jr., beyond this season, he's going to be a free agent. Bob Myers has said that he's open to re-signing Kelly Oubre, but they want him this year, and the reason they didn't pull the trigger on this deal is because Spencer Dinwiddie can't help the team out with Steph Curry this season. Kelly Oubre can. Here's what Bob Myers had to say a couple weeks ago about Kelly Oubre and not trading him. He said, quote, "I think a lot of people thought he might be available, but we value him too, as evidenced by not trading him. I know it was mentioned, which is totally fine. That's the NBA we live in. A lot of players are mentioned. It's harder probably on them. You can tell a player to take it as a compliment, but it's not me or you that's being mentioned as far as moving cities or jobs." And can you imagine that for the people out there watching? If you were just at your respective job and the company's like, you know what, we're going to trade you to another company. See ya, you got to reroute and go to a different city. That would be crazy. Hey, didn't happen to Kelly Oubre Jr., and he is going to play the remaining of his contract out with the Warriors this year and try to help them make the playoffs. As for Spencer Dinwiddie, tell you what, he is a really good scorer when he is healthy, and that partially torn ACL isn't expected to be catastrophic. Here's a peek at what Dinwiddie can do when he's on the floor and healthy. More than 20 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, nearly 7 dimes, shooting a little less than 42% from the floor. So if Spencer Dinwiddie was actually healthy, and I'm Bob Myers, I actually think Dinwiddie would be a playmaking and more consistent upgrade over a guy like Kelly Oubre Jr., but unfortunately, he's rehabbing now from that partially torn ACL, and he's not expected to come back this year. So would have been interesting to see what would have played out if those trade discussions would have taken place with a healthy Spencer Dinwiddie and a healthy Kelly Oubre Jr., but that's not a conversation we're going to get to because Spencer Dinwiddie is not currently healthy right now. He's coming back from that torn ACL. And how does he factor into Brooklyn's future plans with KD, with James Harden, with Kyrie, with Joe Harris, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge? The list goes on and on and on. Does Spencer Dinwiddie factor into the Brooklyn Nets' future plans? So from the Warriors' perspective, Bob Myers might have looked at this deal and said, yeah, the upside and the ability for Spencer Dinwiddie might be greater than Kelly Oubre, but one, he's not available this year. Also, the Nets don't have a lot of leverage because Dinwiddie has made it known he was trying to move on from the Brooklyn Nets anyway. So we talk about Dinwiddie and we compare him with Kelly Oubre. If both of these players were healthy and you had to pick one to add to your franchise, definitely not a cornerstone piece, but maybe aside from Steph Curry and Klay Thompson when he's healthy, who would you choose? Would it be Spencer Dinwiddie? If you like Spence, type SD. If it's Kelly Oubre Jr., type KO. Steph Curry made his return a couple of nights ago, and man, the Golden State Warriors really missed him when he was out of the lineup. He was out for 5 games. The Warriors went 1-4 in his absence. They were terrible defensively, even worse offensively. That all caused by a spinal cord contusion that Steph Curry suffered against the Houston Rockets a couple of weeks ago. He did return earlier this week against Chicago, and in watching Steph, he looks good. He's looked gimpy at times. There was one moment a couple nights ago against Chicago when he went up for a layup, fell on the floor, and you could tell like he kind of contorted his body so he wouldn't fall squarely on that spine. So he has looked somewhat gimpy at times, but this is an injury that when you mess with your spinal cord or your back, it has the chance to maybe last for a little while, but it's nothing that's going to keep Steph Curry out of the lineup for an extended period of time, and that didn't happen with the 2-time MVP. As evidenced by it not really affecting his game either, because in 2 games since returning, against the Bulls and against the Heat last night in a loss, Steph Curry's been going off, okay? 34 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. Steph Curry is putting the team on his back right now. He's shooting 46.5% from the floor, and the Warriors really need it because without Steph Curry in the lineup, they looked legitimately like a G League squad. With Steph Curry in the lineup, they look like a team that can make a run in the Western Conference playoff standings and possibly win a few games, if not a series in the Western Conference without Klay Thompson, which is a huge loss for them. So how has Steph Curry looked to you? You think he's looked great? Type G for great. If you think he's just looked okay, type O for okay. In terms of his production, he's been great. In terms of his tailbone and his spinal cord contusion, I think it's just okay as of now. Let's take a peek at the Western Conference playoff standings right now, and everything has changed so much over the last couple of days. A big reason for that, AD and LeBron out of the lineup with the Lakers. But there's been two constants. That's been the Utah Jazz atop the Western Conference playoff standings in first place at 36-11. They are playing really exciting and fascinating basketball under Quinn Snyder. A fast pace, a bunch of threes. Donovan Mitchell has been great. So they're in at first place in the Western Conference playoff standings, and they've been there for a little while. Number two, the Phoenix Suns, who 2 weeks ago in their last 25 games, they went 20-5. They've cooled down just a tad. Still good for second place in the West, though. The Clippers and the Lakers, they've been going back and forth on the seesaw, third and fourth place in the Western Conference playoff standings. The Nuggets, after making some of those big deals at the deadline to bring in JaVale McGee and Aaron Gordon, are 30-18. They're starting to get some momentum. And at the back half of the playoff standings, the Trailblazers at sixth place, 29-18. The Mavericks still playing pretty good basketball at 25-21. The Spurs have cooled off after a decent start. They're at 24-22. The Grizzlies at ninth place at 22-23. And there are the Warriors at 23-25. Now, a big reason they fell under 500, they didn't have Steph Curry in the lineup. Now that Steph is back, I think you'll see that the Warriors will be able to climb the Western Conference playoff standings. Look, when you take a guy out of a lineup who's averaging almost 30 points per game, who's won 2 MVPs, who's lit it up in the playoffs and won a couple of NBA championships, and you have to rely on secondary players to score in bunches like Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins, you're going to struggle for a little while. What's funny is that the Warriors really had trouble defensively without Steph. So I think that defensively they're going to get better. Offensively, of course, when they get 29 points per game back into that lineup, the Warriors will be in good shape as well. So the Warriors currently just in the Western Conference playoff standings. With Steph healthy, do you think that they will make the playoffs? Type P if you think the Warriors will be one of the top 10 teams to make the big dance. If you think they'll miss it, type M for miss. Time to interact with some of you watching here, NBA Now live here on Chat Sports. I want you to get into the comments, and I'm looking forward to checking them because I haven't been able to check them here in a few minutes. Predict who will win the MVP this season. We threw out the NBA MVP odds. The Joker currently atop those NBA MVP odds. Do you think that the Joker's going to hold on? Do you think it's going to be another player who wins the NBA MVP? Get into the comments and let me know a player you think is going to be victorious in the MVP race. Donovan D typing Harden, Franco Leonardis typing Embiid, Sadner Singh going with Kevin Durant. I think Durant, he was averaging 29 points per before he got hurt. I think he was in that discussion before he got injured. He hasn't played since mid-February. Mubarak, Damian Lillard. Great pick right there. And I can't believe that Damian Lillard isn't in this list of the top NBA MVP odds. It's crazy to me. I don't think Damian Lillard gets enough respect. I thought he was going to garner and bring in that respect last year because he was on the national stage in the bubble and he was lighting it up. Somehow, hey, we're not paying Damian Lillard the proper dues for all of those watching in Portland. So going back to the comments, Terrence T123 listing Zion Williamson. Terrence, I love that. I looked at Zion Williamson's last 25 games on Monday. They were unbelievable. North of 25 points per game. And at the NBA level, for a guy who doesn't shoot threes, for him to be shooting more than 60% from the floor, it's almost like unheard of. He looks like a more agile Shaquille O'Neal. That's what Rick Carlisle said. He looks like a more dynamic Charles Barkley. Zion Williamson, a great choice for the NBA MVP. Muhammad typing Kyrie. I don't think it's going to be Kyrie Irving. When a guy is just like, you know what, I'm not going to go on the road trip this week. You can't depend on a guy like that. Hasn't been on the floor enough. So, Muhammad, I don't think Kyrie is going to win the MVP. Do me a favor. I'm officially 1 month in here at Chat Sports. Appreciate all of you for rocking with me. Hopefully you've been enjoying the show. Give me a follow. Welcome me to the Chat Sports Squad on Twitter. And give me a follow at Chase_Senior. But you know who's making this whole show move, this whole show operate? He's putting graphics up. He's helping me. He's in my ear, letting me know what's going on. That's my boy, my producer, Sam Brown. Can we get Sam Brown more followers? He's at Sam Brown CS. We both need 20 followers. So can you both, the people watching right now, can you give us both Twitter followers? I'm at Chase_Senior. He is at Sam Brown CS. And we will update those figures throughout today's show. But I have my Twitter page open, and I'm looking forward to seeing who follows me. And I will give you a shout out if you give me a follow on Twitter as well. And Sam Brown will definitely do the same too. Also, hey, I see a lot of people commenting right now. If you want to get your question answered, there's a couple of ways to do that here on today's show. You can either hashtag NBA, that allows producer Sam Brown to see that question, or you can super chat us, that allows you to totally skip the entire line and we'll answer your question right off the bat. So hashtag NBA or super chat to get your questions followed here on NBA Now live here on Chat Sports. This is NBA Now live here on Chat Sports. I am your host, Chase Senior. Give me a follow on Twitter at Chase_Senior. We're going to shift the focus to the people watching right now. We're going to do the first of one of our Q&A mailbags. So get your questions in, super chat us, or hashtag NBA. That will allow us to answer your question. And we kick things off with Abnahav Balaj. So he asks, is Giannis going to win MVP for the third straight year? So I popped up those NBA MVP odds, and Giannis is right in that discussion. I just think that people are kind of distracted by the fact that he's come up short in the playoffs the last couple of years, and they've said, okay, look, Giannis, 2 straight MVPs. Can we give him a third straight? His numbers might be out of this world right now, and yeah, we'll put him in the MVP discussion at plus 800. But a third straight, I think there are better options out there, like Nikola Jokic, like James Harden, like Embiid, like LeBron. I think those guys are more worthy, and they've been more valuable to their teams this year than a guy like Giannis. Coach Dreadhead chiming in. Which lottery pick teams will make the playoffs next year? That's a pretty interesting conversation. So I'll sneak this one in there. If the Minnesota Timberwolves don't land in the top 3 in the lottery, they have to trade their pick to the Golden State Warriors. That's a team right there that could be in the NBA lottery. As it stands right now, Golden State is currently 14th in the NBA lottery standings, but I think some teams can really make drastic improvements. Like, how can the Minnesota Timberwolves, Coach Dreadhead, be this bad for this long, especially if they can land a Cade Cunningham, a Jalen Suggs, and you pair them up with, Karl Anthony Towns? I just don't see how the Timberwolves can be bad for so long. So they might not make the playoffs next year, but they should make a lot of progress. The RMB Bros, should the Warriors sign Jabari Parker and Damian Jones? Damian Jones is a 3rd or 4th option at the center position. Sure, if you need some insurance, it looks as though DeMarcus Cousins is going to sign a 10-day contract with the Los Angeles Clippers once he passes COVID protocols. So the Warriors are going to be out on him. There was some rumors and speculation maybe they could go that route. As for Jabari Parker, it's unfortunate what's happened to him since coming out of Duke. He was looked at as a highly touted prospect coming out of Duke, but after a couple of productive seasons to start off his NBA career, he was really hit hard with some injuries. That ACL injury kind of zapped some of his athleticism. I don't see why the Warriors would bring in Jabari Parker when they have a guy like Andrew Wiggins, who is what a lot of people thought Jabari Parker was going to be. Next question coming in from Albert139. Are the Lakers still the favorites with all the injuries? Albert, I think the Lakers are the most experienced playoff team. I think they're one of the deepest playoff teams. I think they're one of the best playoff teams. But as you mentioned, it all comes down to health. As long as LeBron James and Anthony Davis are healthy, I think the Lakers are the favorite to win the Western Conference playoffs. And I think they're the favorites to get to the NBA Finals for a second consecutive year. If I'm the Lakers brass, you know what I'm doing? I'm just letting LeBron and AD get healthy. And yes, I do think the Lakers are the best team in the West. So I mentioned the Lakers right there as being in contention for the NBA championship this year. Who do you guys think will win the NBA title this year? Get into the comments and let me know. If you're living in the Los Angeles area, I want you to go to chatsports.com/LakersNB and download the Newsbreak app. And while you're there, also give Newsbreak a follow. If you're living in the city of Los Angeles, you can set your settings on the Newsbreak app so that you are updated as to all of the happenings that's going on in Los Angeles. We're talking news, pop culture, sports, and politics. But if you live in Malibu, if you live in Orange County or one of the surrounding areas, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach, which is where my dad actually lived for a couple of years, you can enter your zip code, and that way anything that's happening in those specific areas, you will be updated as to what's going on in your neighborhoods. Also, while you're on the Newsbreak app, give the Lakers Report a follow. We're at 61 followers on that channel right now, on that account, and we're trying to get to 100. So hit that follow button on the Newsbreak app, but also give us a follow on the Lakers Report on the app as well. That's chatsports.com/Lakers. Lakers NB. We're getting to more questions here on the NBA Q&A mailbag. Is Colin Sexton the most underrated player in the league right now? I think he's up there, Elliot Kish. Colin Sexton having a great year too. I think he's going to be one of the most dynamic guards over the next couple of years. And as long as he continues to develop, Colin Sexton is going to be a very dynamic player. And when you look at his numbers this year, averaging almost 24 points per game, I really like his playmaking and play creating abilities. So I'm with you there. I think Colin Sexton is one of the underrated players in the NBA right now. Next question coming in from Yasmin Hassan. Is it me, or why is everyone acting like CP3 doesn't get anything for what he did to the Suns? 3 second rounders? I'm not sure what he's saying there. Do you think he owns something for what he did to improve the Suns? So I get the basis of the question, and I understand what you're trying to get to. I think CP3 is one of the most underappreciated and undervalued superstars in the history of the NBA. A lot of people like to knock CP3 because he hasn't won an NBA championship, and that's the one thing that's missing from his resume. But everywhere that CP3 has gone, they have won. And when it comes to the Oklahoma City Thunder last year, with the Phoenix Suns this year, he's kind of changed that culture all by himself. So Yasmin, if that answers your question, I think CP3 is awesome and deserves a lot of praise. Next question coming in from Shanav. Could the Nuggets make a run for a top 1 to 3 seed? Maybe. They're currently in 5th place right now. The Lakers, if AD and LeBron are out for an extended period of time, they might continue to fall in the Western Conference playoffs because of the deadline additions that the Nuggets did make, bringing in Aaron Gordon and JaVale McGee. I think they improved their roster as much as anybody. So I think the Nuggets can climb the standings. Are they going to get a top 1 to 3 seed? I don't think so. I think we're looking at maybe a 4 or 5 range for the Denver Nuggets. So hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Chase_Senior. I currently have 3,643 followers. We're trying to get that follower count up. Same too with Sam Brown, the producer who's making this whole show operate here today as I'm riding solo for the first time. Give him a follow on Twitter at SamBrownCS. He currently has 1,034 followers. We were able to get it north of 1,000 back a couple of weeks ago. Let's keep that number moving. Let's get Sam Brown some more followers as well. More questions coming in on this Q&A segment here on NBA Now live on Chat Sports. What do you think the Raptors will do in the offseason? I think them trading away Norman Powell and floating the possibility of trading away Kyle Lowry signaled a reset for the Toronto Raptors. I think that they are going to rebuild. And we're about to do our mock draft lottery here soon. The Raptors are right in there. And I think that if they're able to bring in a premier player in the draft this upcoming season, and you can continue to build around guys like OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, and you have one of the best coaches in the league, one of the best executives in Masai Ujiri, I think the Raptors can rebuild faster than a lot of people expect them to. Another question coming in from King J. King J, I recognize that name. Appreciate you tuning in. What is Ben Simmons' trade value? Cade or Suggs or Simmons? Getting to Ben Simmons first. Revisionist history here. Isn't it crazy that the Rockets reportedly turned down a deal that would have netted them Ben Simmons and Tyrese Maxey for James Harden? Because you look at the player assets that they got for James Harden, it was really only Victor Oladipo, and they traded him away to the Miami Heat. So they have no immediate player assets on that roster right now, which is just crazy. And they could have brought in a guy like Ben Simmons who, yes, he can't shoot threes. He's somewhat limited, but he's an all-NBA defensive player. He's one of the best playmakers in the entire NBA. I think Ben Simmons can net you a player like James Harden in a package, but the Rockets didn't pull the trigger there. As for Cade or Suggs or Simmons, our NBA lottery mock draft is coming up, so tune in for that. That's coming up right around the corner. Also, be sure to subscribe to our Chat Sports main YouTube page. We're closing in on 240,000 subscribers. Help us get there right now. So if you want to stay up to date with all the latest news and rumors across the NBA, we do fun things like an NBA mock lottery draft. Hit that big red button down below. And hey, let's get to 240,000 subscribers today. Go to youtube.com/chatsportstv and subscribe right now. More questions coming in. This one from Joseph Miller. Have you been impressed with Anthony Edwards? Will the Timberwolves make a move at power forward this offseason? Joseph, I think power forward is a spot that the Timberwolves could address in the NBA draft coming up. As for Anthony Edwards, he's been better than I thought. Now, a lot of people are going to say, should he have gone number one? Over the course of time, we'll see, because LaMelo Ball was really putting together a great year for the Charlotte Hornets before he hurt his wrist. I have been impressed with Anthony Edwards, though. He's just been a little bit inconsistent. I know a couple weeks ago he dropped around 40 points and was tremendous, but then he'll go and shoot like 10 for 30 on another night. So I've been impressed so far, but I'd like to see a little bit more consistency come from Anthony Edwards, but you also have to factor in he is a rookie. Mohamed Tour. Can we see the current playoff seedings right now, please? Yes, let's run through it real quick. Let's get to the Eastern Conference. So Nets, Sixers, Bucks, Hornets, Heat. That is the top 5 in the Eastern Conference playoff standings. Knicks, Hawks, Celtics, Pacers, and Bulls rounds out the top 10 teams in the Eastern Conference. And if you've been living under a rock, 10 teams make the playoffs in both conferences this year. As for the Western Conference playoff standings, Jazz still in there at first place. Suns, Clippers, Lakers, and Nuggets. That is the top 5 in the West. And the 6 through 10 goes as so. Trailblazers, Mavericks, Spurs, Grizzlies, and Warriors. So there you go. You ask us to answer one of your questions, and we could pop up the Western Conference standings just like that, all thanks to Sam Brown, the producer. Another question from Derek Lewis. Kelly Olynyk to Dallas if he gets bought out. I actually think that's pretty fascinating. So Kelly Olynyk, not a great defensive player, but is averaging 18 points per game in a small sample size with the Houston Rockets so far this year. I think is a valuable player in this sense. You don't want him starting, but if he can come in off the bench and be a stretch 4 or 5, he can knock down some threes, he can give you some depth, he can also space the floor a little bit. As for the fit, I think he'd be a good backup behind Kristaps Porzingis, and I really don't think Kelly Olynyk would really cost all that much in the future, so I think that's a pretty good depth piece for the Dallas Mavericks. Get into the comments and shout out your team. We had you shout out your cities earlier. Shout out your team, and we'll give you some shout outs here. Let me know what your favorite team is in the NBA. We got Warriors from Style Sunner. We got Jackson Fulton saying the Houston Rockets. I'm thinking of you right now. R&B Bros Warriors, so let me know what your favorite team is in the comment section. Another question coming in from Donovan D. Thoughts on DeMarcus Cousins on the Clippers? So the star players for the Clippers wanted to bring DeMarcus Cousins in. They wanted the front office to sign him to a 10-day contract. That has not been made like officially official because DeMarcus Cousins still has to go through COVID protocols. So when he does join the Clippers, at this point in his career, DeMarcus Cousins, he isn't what he once was from 2010 to 2018 when he was one of the best centers in the league. At this point, he's really just a backup option. Acreus chiming in. What are the chances of Lowry and DeRozan teaming up again in New York? So the New York Knicks actually have a lot of cap space this upcoming offseason. Are they going to go after a guy like Kyle Lowry? That would be a win-now move because Kyle Lowry on NBA trade deadline day turned 35, so he's no spring chicken at all. Now he's still playing at an all-star caliber level, so if they think that they can win immediately, maybe. As for DeMar DeRozan, I don't see why you'd bring in both because both are getting older. If I had to pick between the two, I'd go Kyle Lowry. Thoughts on Patrick Williams, Muhammad? I'll tell you this. Patrick Williams has been excellent for the Chicago Bulls this year. Drafted out of Florida State. Some people thought it was a reach. What I really like about Patrick Williams, he's not scared to defend anybody in the NBA. And I think that's going to allow him to play for 10 straight years because he can really defend at an elite level. And as he develops his offensive game and knocks down three-pointers more, I think Patrick Williams is going to look more and more like a very good draft choice for the Chicago Bulls out of Florida State. Next question coming in from Jeff Stamps. What player could the Celtics target in free agency to help their big man woes? If they want to go traditional center, Andre Drummond is going to be a free agent. If they want to trade for a player, Miles Turner could be on the block if the Indiana Pacers decide to rebuild. So I think the Celtics would look at centers like that on the market. The problem with Andre Drummond, I think the Celtics could be really dangerous if they were to go out and at the trade deadline pick up a player like Nikola Vucevic. Andre Drummond is more of a traditional center who really just commands the paint and clogs things up down there. I'd like to see them spread the floor a little bit with a big man. Another question coming in from Philip. What do you think Kemba's trade value for the offseason is? Who can the Celtics get for him? If you would have asked me this 2 years ago, Kemba Walker had a lot of trade value. Now, not so much, because teams across the league understand this isn't the same player anymore. You could look at the numbers and point to the 18 points per game and say Kemba Walker is still producing at a really good level. But when you watch him, he just is lacking a little bit of burst, a little bit of athleticism, and I think that knee injury, which happened last year around the All-Star break, is a big reason for that, and that's caused Kemba Walker's game to just go down a touch, but that also affects his trade value as well. Be sure to give us follows on Twitter. I'm at Chase_Senior. He is at Sam Brown CS. He's producing the show. So I'm currently at 3,643. Sam Brown, 1,034. Let's get that follower count up. I know I'm new here, so I appreciate everybody for giving me a follow, welcoming me to the Chat Sports Squad. And I already gained a couple of followers throughout the show, according to producer Sam. So I appreciate you all for giving me a follow. And if you did, get into the comments and say me, and then I'll give you a shout out. King J, Goats. Hey, if you're calling us Goats, really appreciate that. Yeah, really appreciate that, King J. But give me a follow, and if you do, type me in the comments, and we'll give you a shout out. I'm also going to look at who followed me here. Hillel J, Michael Scatone, Brady DeRosa, Brett Van Hoos, Candy Kisses, Mark Calder, Jacob Martin. Will eat your leftovers. That's a warning right there. Will eat your leftovers. Hey, I got to eat my leftovers before you do, Will. Aiden Rodriguez, Terrence, Brian, Ziptus, Amateur Fanboy Podcast giving me a follow as well. Sam Brown, let's hear from you. Who's giving you a follow?
I only got 3 follows so far, but I appreciate Boomerang Jack, Glenn Hauser, and Blink Yee, 2019 NBA champs in his bio. Big Lakers guy.
There we go. Nice.
There you go. Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, give us a follow on Twitter. I'm at Chase_Senior. Producer Sam is at Sam Brown CS. Glenn Arios saying me. Appreciate that. Jeer also saying me as well. King J once again letting us know. Appreciate that. Lakers should sign Sam and Chase. Thank you, King J. We can ball a little bit. I can shoot the tray ball. There's no doubt
Jump
about
shot's not
that.
bad. I'll give you 5 hard fouls every time.
Boom. There we go. Sam Brown couldn't defend me. We already know that. All right, coming up here on NBA Now Live here on Chat Sports, we're going to bring you our first NBA lottery mock draft. So 14 players, 14 picks coming up next on this first NBA mock draft that we're trotting out here. You might say it's way too early. It is never too early to bring you a mock draft. So if you're excited for our first NBA lottery mock draft, this is what I want you to do. Hit that like button. We're at 105 right now. Let's get that figure up. You're watching NBA Now live here on Chat Sports. I am your host, Chase Sr. Give me a follow on Twitter at Chase_Senior. And today's show brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. Be sure to head to manscaped.com/chat. And when you go there and you make a purchase, you get 20% off plus free shipping. So the NBA made some announcements this week as for the schedule coming up here in the next couple of months. The draft combine is going to take place from June 21st to June 27th. The NBA draft lottery will take place on June 22nd. And the much anticipated NBA draft scheduled for June 29th. You might say, well, that's much later than previous years. That's because the coronavirus has kind of messed up all of the scheduling here. So that's why those dates have been pushed back. And I'll ask you this, if you want a full first round mock draft, we're only doing the lottery today, make sure you smash that like button. A couple more people have hit that like button here on the show. We're up to 109. Let's get a few more likes, and if you do so, we will be sure in the coming days to bring you another mock draft, but this time, instead of just doing the NBA draft lottery, we will do an entire first round. And we know by looking at the numbers out there, people love mock drafts. Let's kick off the NBA lottery mock draft with my number 1 overall pick going to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and that is Jalen Suggs. Now, a lot of people watching might say, oh my gosh, Cade Cunningham isn't at number 1. You are absolutely crazy. Look, the difference between these two players is not great. I think they're on each other's heels. And as of right now on this Friday, I have Jalen Suggs number 1 overall on my big board, and I think he's the best fit, the best player to go to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And throughout the NCAA tournament, with Gonzaga making it to a Final Four, possibly a national championship if the Zags defeat UCLA, I think we've seen that Jalen Suggs' game really translates to the next level, and I think he's been able to improve his stock. I look at his offensive package. Any guy that has a step-back 3 in his game, I think that translates to the next level. I also love Suggs' playmaking abilities. He's not as big as Cade Cunningham. He's about 6'4", as opposed to Cade Cunningham being 6'8", but I don't think athleticism is a problem. I think this guy is a great leader. I think he can be a great scorer. I also think he can be an awesome creator off the dribble. And in terms of vision as well, I have been blown away by Jalen Suggs. I have him going number 1 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Number 2, the aforementioned Cade Cunningham. I thought he was outstanding throughout this year for the Oklahoma State Sooners. I thought Oklahoma State was fantastic, and I thought Cade Cunningham had a fantastic year. I mean, you look at these numbers side to side, right? And you might say, okay, Cade Cunningham, much more points per game as opposed to Jalen Suggs, 20.1 to 14, right? This is the thing. I mean, for the Cowboys at Oklahoma State, there weren't that many players on the roster who are NBA prospects. But for Jalen Suggs, on the other hand, he's playing with multiple pros, so that's why the scoring output much higher for Cade Cunningham than Jalen Suggs. But again, these two players are so close, but I think Cade Cunningham or Jalen Suggs, whether they go 1 or 2, they will be a great fit to either the Timberwolves or the Houston Rockets. Number 3, a guy who a lot of people probably haven't heard of much, and that's because he elected not to play in college this past year, and that's Jalen Green. He's been playing for the G League Ignite. So I think it's unfortunate that these rules in college basketball have caused some of these players to skip out on college, because we don't get to see Jalen Green have a season like Cade Cunningham had, or like Jalen Suggs had. Jalen Green, though, is expected to be a premier prospect, and he could really go 2. He could go number 3. He's been really impressive with the Ignite. We just haven't really heard much about him because he's been playing in the G League, but I have him going number 3 to Detroit. Going number 4, Evan Mobley, another guy like Jalen Suggs, really improved his stock and improved some awareness around him throughout the NCAA tournament. He is long. He is lanky. He is athletic. And if he continues to improve his game and maybe adds like a pull-up mid-range jumper to his game and he evolves and adds a 3 to his arsenal, Evan Mobley is a guy who will remind a lot of people athletically like kind of James Wiseman, and I like him going number 4 to Orlando. I know they have Wendell Carter, but you put those two in the front court together, and I think that's a dynamic duo at the forward and center spots that Orlando can build with. So who is the best prospect in the 2021 class? If you think it's Jalen Suggs like me, type S. If you think it's Jalen Green, type G. If you think it's Cade Cunningham for the Oklahoma State Cowboys, type C. Or if you think it's Evan Mobley out of USC, type M. We continue on with our NBA lottery mock draft, and going number 5 to the Cleveland Cavaliers, another guy who is playing for the Ignite at the G League level, another guy who a lot of us haven't heard of because of that reason, Jonathan Kuminga. So Jonathan Kuminga is a guy who can be a playmaker at the NBA level, and in 13 games at the G League level this past year, you saw his potential on display. Averaging almost 16 points per game. He can rebound the basketball as well. He can dish out a couple of dimes per night. The field goal percentage, not what you'd like it to be, but I think it's important to note that these guys who go to the G League, yeah, it might be the G League and it doesn't get enough attention or as much attention as the college ranks, but you also have to think about this, that every player who is in the G League is a pro. So for a high school player making the jump to the G League, that is still a high school to pro jump, and that's why the numbers for some of these guys might be a little lower than you expect, but the whole thought process is here, you buy low on development and hope that they can develop over time. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. Hey, my man out there, I mean, if you want the perfect package, we have an answer for you. Manscaped saves balls, Chat Sports saves balls. And if you're like hanging with your lady this upcoming weekend and she's looking at you and she's like, hey, I mean, you got to clean it up down there, we have an answer for you. If you go to manscaped.com/chat, you get 20% off plus free shipping, and the products are endless. So if you just want to go with a little trim, you go with the Lawnmower 3.0. There's even a little like buzzer gauge so you don't nick yourself, you don't start bleeding, and you can get rid of some hair down there. And the products across the board, we've all used them here at Chat Sports. They work well, they are long lasting, they are very effective. I know I really like the boxer briefs, especially when I go out on runs because I don't want everything flopping around down there. And how about the toiletry bag? I think toiletry bags are very underrated because you can throw all your stuff in there, and if you got to go on a quick road trip, packs easily into a suitcase. The ball deodorant, for my people who like to work out there, you put some ball deodorant down there, takes away the smell, and then the ball toner, another great product. So I just mentioned multiple products there thanks to our friends at Manscaped, and if you want the perfect package, you can basically take care of that 20% off plus free shipping thanks to our friends at Manscaped. We move on with our NBA lottery mock draft, going number 6 to the Washington Wizards. Keon Johnson, guard out of Tennessee. He just declared that he was going to enter the NBA draft. And for the Washington Wizards, look, I think it's time to look to possibly rebuild. Say you trade away Bradley Beal. Say you trade away Russell Westbrook. And you say, you know what, we're hitting the reset button. We just want to reset here, and we want to bring back assets for Bradley Beal, and we want to rebuild. Keon Johnson could be a very good player to help rebuild with. Davion Mitchell, one of my favorite players in the NCAA tournament. This is a guy who has a lot of experience at the college level, so he's not going to be as young as some of these younger prospects because he's been in Baylor for a couple of seasons now, but he's one of my favorite prospects. Now, some people out there might be saying, Davion Mitchell, number 7? His stock is soaring because he's shown in the NCAA tournament. He can create off the dribble. He can hit dribble pull-ups, he can knock down threes, but he is also a ferocious defender. And I love the energy in which Davion Mitchell plays with. And I think if you put him at a player development factory like Toronto, he will end up being a very good player. Look at what they've done with Fred VanVleet, with Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. They get their hands on Davion Mitchell in Toronto, he's going to be fantastic. How about Scotty Barnes? What Leonard Hamilton has done at Florida State has been so underrated. It seems as though they make it to the Sweet 16 every single year. Scotty Barnes was a big reason why Florida State was getting so much national attention this entire season. I have him going to Orlando here, and that is the pick that comes back in the Nikola Vucevic trade, and I think Scotty Barnes would fit in well with what Orlando is trying to do. They have some young guards on the roster. Markelle Fultz coming back from that torn ACL. I think they need a forward. Scotty Barnes could be that option. Who do you think is the most underrated prospect in this draft class? There are a lot of them. I think some people are sleeping on Evan Mobley, but now that people watch him in the NCAA tournament, they're like, this cat is for real. But get into the comments and let me know your most underrated draft prospect in this upcoming class. We move forward with our NBA lottery mock draft. And going number 9 to the Oklahoma City Thunder, Moses Moody. So the Thunder, they have a bevy of draft assets for the next 5-10 years, all thanks to Sam Presti. This is one of their picks. And this is another team, along with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Can you imagine a backcourt with him once he comes back from that foot injury and Moses Moody, a guy who got some great coaching at the college level? Really like this pairing with Moses Moody going to OKC. We move forward with Corey Kispert. So Kispert, he's got a great head of hair, right? And he's playing for Gonzaga right now alongside Jalen Suggs. And I think some people are sleeping on him a little bit as well. This is a guy who can play forward, stretch the floor, can give you some size down low, but he can also knock down some threes as well. And I love the energy in which he plays with. The hair is great. The shooting percentages, even better. Almost 54% from the deck. We're talking about a 45% three-point shooter. And everybody focuses on Jalen Suggs, Jalen Suggs, Jalen Suggs. My man right here is the second best option. He's just been somewhat overshadowed by a guy who's probably going to go 1, 2, or 3 in the upcoming draft when speaking of Suggs. If you want more NBA videos throughout the entire 2020-2021 season, or if you want more NBA mock drafts, hit that big red button down below. And we're approaching 240,000 subscribers here on our main Chat Sports YouTube channel. So, hey, hit that subscriber button. And more subscribers means more videos, means more opportunities for us to do NBA mock drafts like this or news and rumors covering the NBA. Head to youtube.com/chatsportstv. We continue on with our NBA lottery mock draft. I have Kai Jones, the center out of Texas, going to the Indiana Pacers. My thought process here is that if the Pacers decide to rebuild, hit the reset button, and they trade away Miles Turner, Kai Jones, who is really long, really athletic, could fit in nicely with the Pacers. Zaire Williams, I have him going to the Sacramento Kings. I know Sacramento has been in the bunker for so long. I actually like what the Kings are doing, building right now, because they have De'Aaron Fox, who I think is going to be a bona fide superstar. I really like the draft choice last year of Tyrese Halliburton, and I think Zaire Williams could be a wing player, a forward, who could fit in nicely in addition to those players. And if we're talking about character guys, you have Halliburton and you have Zaire Williams, who went to Stanford. I like the makings of the culture for a Kings franchise that has lacked that in previous years. Number 13 overall, James Bouknight out of UConn. He just declared for the NBA draft a couple of days ago. This is a really exciting player. And the thought process here, you pair him up with Ja Morant, yeah, that's fireworks in the backcourt in Memphis, a place that I know likes to party, they like barbecue, they like good music, and they love their basketball. And James Bouknight put up some numbers with the Huskies this past season, almost 19 points per game. He's a guy who can rebound the basketball as well. As he continues to develop as an NBA player, I'd like him to become a better facilitator and creator, But if he goes to Memphis, you already have a guy who can do that in Ja Morant. So I think James Bouknight could be an ideal fit on that Memphis Grizzlies roster. Going number 14 to the Golden State Warriors, wrapping up this NBA lottery mock draft, Jalen Johnson. So he has slipped on this draft board, not because he decided to leave Duke early, not because I don't think he's a good player. I just think some of these players ahead of him are better. And I think a team like the Golden State Warriors could look at a guy like Jalen Johnson and really bet on his upside. And I love how the Warriors have been able to develop players over time. I think they'd really be able to develop Jalen Johnson. He got great coaching for the time that he was at Duke under Coach K. But hey, he goes to the Warriors with Steve Kerr, and I think Jalen Johnson could be an excellent player for the Warriors if they continue to develop him. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. Go to manscaped.com/chat. You get 20% off plus free shipping. I've used all of these products, and they are tremendous, especially the Lawnmower 3.0. Hey, every couple of weeks, you got to go down there. You got to trim up because you got to be looking good for the lady. To get down there, she doesn't want to have to go through a forest, and you know how you can take care of that? It's a Lawnmower 3.0 thanks to our friends at Manscaped. So if you want one of the hottest deals out there, head to manscaped.com/chat. You get 20% off plus free shipping, and in addition to the Lawnmower 3.0, they offer a bevy of other fantastic products. Ball toner, ball deodorant, Manscaped boxers. They save balls, and since they partner with us, we're trying to help you save your balls as well. To wrap up this NBA lottery mock draft and to summarize things up, I have Jalen Suggs out of Gonzaga going number 1 to Minnesota, Cade Cunningham going 2 to Houston, Jalen Green from the G League level going to the Pistons, Evan Mobley, the star out of USC, going to the Orlando Magic, Jonathan Kuminga going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. We move forward. Keon Johnson out of Tennessee going to the Washington Wizards. Maybe they hit the rebuild. Davion Mitchell, one of my favorite prospects in this class, going 7th to the Toronto Raptors and their player development factory. Scotty Barnes, a lot of upside there out of Florida State, going 8 to Orlando. Moses Moody out of Arkansas going to Oklahoma City. Corey Kispert from Gonzaga going to the New Orleans Pelicans. Corey Kispert, whatever you want to call him. I've heard it said both ways. Kai Jones going 11 to the Indiana Pacers. Zaire Williams going 12 to the Sacramento Kings. James Bouknight going 13 to the Memphis Grizzlies. And Jalen Johnson, number 14, to the Golden State Warriors. So, hey, there's my first NBA mock lottery draft right there. Grade it for me. Get into the comments. You can give me an A. You can give me a B, a C, D, or F. Hey, I'm new here. I'm trying. I'm doing my thing. And looking at those draft prospects, can't wait for the NBA draft. But let me know how I did on my first mock. Let's do some shout outs here for the people watching here, NBA Now live here on Chat Sports. Hey, what do you think? Get into the comments. Let me know how I did on my first mock draft. Give me an A, give me a B, give me a C, D, or F. You can be harsh if you want to. I am subject to criticism. I would give myself a B-. I think there is room to grow. I am one of my harshest critics. And as I do this first show solo by myself, hey, I can't wait to do it myself once more again in the future because I will improve and my mock draft will be even better. King J, I appreciate that. I'm not going to accept your A+ because that's like saying, hey, there's room to grow, but I just want to be too nice and give you an A+. I appreciate it though, King J. You're the man for that feedback. Jur giving me a G+. That's cool too. I mean, G+ wasn't on the scale, so I can't technically give you any credit because I gave you 5 options and you didn't pick one of the 5, but it's all right. Nicholas Allen C, that's cool. Hey, I went Jalen Suggs over Cade Cunningham. I'm a firm believer that he could be the better draft prospect, so I went with him number 1. It's all right if you disagree. Develop systems going B. King J again, A. I appreciate that. You're just giving me so many A's. Mike J giving me a B. Grade my first mock draft. B- from Miles. The Gold Eagle. NI. That is not one of the letter grades there, but I appreciate the comment anyway. So, yeah, I mean, we're trying here. First mock draft. As we move forward, as we do more intel on these draft prospects, as we see them at the NBA Draft Combine, that's fine. We'll find out more about these draft prospects, and these mock drafts will be lit. Jay Moose giving me an A. William Tab an A. I think all of you are just being a little bit too nice. How would you grade my performance on today's show? You can do that too. If you want to get your question answered, hashtag NBA, or you can super chat to jump the line. That way we can answer your question right away. So if you guys have any questions about the entire NBA, hey, let us know in the comments using hashtag NBA or super chat, and we will be sure to answer your questions. Jay Moose, once again, giving me an A for the mock draft. William Tab, an A. Adrian Davis, E. It's A, B, C, D, or F. I don't know where you're from, but there's no grade scale that I know of that I'm familiar with that has an E on it. So I don't know what you're talking about. NOLA Pelicans fan, B. Okay. Hey, the Pelicans don't make the playoffs. They might be in a position to make a decent draft choice, which they could really use. So, all right, let's do one more mailbag here. Use hashtag NBA or super chat, and we'll answer your questions. You're watching NBA Now live here on Chat Sports. I am your host, Chase Sr. Give me a follow on Twitter at Chase_Senior, riding solo on the show for my very first time today, and I'm excited to answer your questions. This next one coming in from Sai E. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Should the Bulls re-sign Lauri Markkanen? So according to Bulls executives, they don't see a future of Lauri Markkanen and Nikola Vucevic in a front court together. So I actually think the pairing kind of makes sense, but maybe it doesn't, because since making that trade for Vooch, the Bulls have really struggled, and they're on a 5-game losing streak. So he's going to be a restricted free agent. That's also the thing. There's going to be a team out there that's going to offer him a huge contract. Next question coming in from Style Stunner 55. Is Steph Curry the favorite for MVP? According to odds makers and according to Vegas, Steph Curry is not currently the MVP. It is Nikola Jokic, who is leading the MVP odds race right now, followed by James Harden, Joel Embiid, LeBron James, and Giannis. So, yeah, going back to that question, I don't think Steph is the favorite for MVP. Do you believe the Orlando Magic could be a team to watch out for with their new young group? So, Cash Out Isaiah, I appreciate the question. I actually liked what the Orlando Magic did on NBA trade deadline day. I thought that was a franchise that really needed to just reboot, reset, and start rebuilding. And how do you do that? You get assets back for Nikola Vucevic and Aaron Gordon, and they got first-round picks back. They got young players to build around, and they're also going to net a pretty good draft pick coming up here in 2021. So I do believe that the Magic are a team to watch out for, maybe not just for a couple of seasons. Jay Moose chiming in. There is no way Steph Curry is leaving the Warriors for the Lakers. The media is just making this false report because they want it to happen. So, Jay, we've talked about that here at Chat Sports on both our Warriors channel and our Lakers channel. And the reason we do that is because of this. Like, when Brian Windhorst says that LeBron has started recruiting Steph Curry, Brian Windhorst has been covering LeBron James going back to his St. Vincent St. Mary days in high school. So he knows LeBron well, maybe better than any media member out there. So he has intel on what's going on. Now, of course, the chances of Steph leaving the Warriors, very, very slim. But when there are reports and rumblings and former players and well-respected reporters are saying Steph didn't sign his extension, Warriors are struggling right now, Clay got hurt again, maybe he leaves after next season, there is a remote possibility. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's something to watch and look out for. And if it does happen, where Steph Curry leaves the Warriors, I wouldn't be overly shocked. Plus, he's going to be like 35 years old at that point anyway. Next question coming in from Terry Two-Tones. Say that 10 times fast. Celtics should have traded for a big. Yeah, I look at the package that the Orlando Magic got for Nikola Vucevic, and I ask myself, like, why didn't the Celtics put together assets to trade for a guy like Vooch when they really could have and really could have used him? I think Vooch would have been the perfect fit for that team. I think Vooch has been one of the best centers in the league over some time, and he's only making $22 million through 2022-23. The Celtics could have used their $28.7 million trade exception to absorb his salary. Now, that doesn't go away after this year. They can use that in future years, but I thought they should have used it on a guy like Nikola Vucevic. Here's what I want you to do next. Name a surprise team that will miss the playoffs. Could it be the Golden State Warriors if they continue to be and play inconsistent? Possibly so, but get into the comments and predict it for me. A surprise team that will miss the playoffs. I think the Warriors are on the brink of that. Another question coming in from Satanor Singh. Can Kevin Durant still win MVP? So Satanor, he hasn't played since mid-February. The numbers, crazy. Almost 29 points per game. And I think KD has blown a lot of people away with how he's been able to produce, play, and look coming off that torn Achilles. I think him missing as much time as he has, and according to reports, he's going to come back soon, I think that takes him out of the running for the MVP race. Can the Lakers go Melo for buyout? I don't see a reason why the Trailblazers would move on from Carmelo. He's been an impact player and kind of rejuvenated his career, so I don't see why the Trailblazers would get rid of Melo, which would then cause the Lakers to not go after him. Franco Leonardis coming in with the question, will OKC make a big move in this offseason or draft or not draft at all? Well, Franco, they need to make some draft choices because they have so many over the next couple of seasons. I talked about them in my mock. I think that they go guard to pair with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think that's the position group that they target. As far as them making a big move, it's kind of a hard sell to go after a big-name superstar in a small market like that. They drafted KD, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. That's why they got those superstars in. They traded for a guy like Paul George. Can they bring one in free agency? I'm not sure. Draft and developing is the best route for OKC. Mubarak with another question. Can Ja Morant win a ship with the Grizzlies? I love Ja Morant. I think he's one of the bright young superstars in the NBA right now. From an athletic standpoint, he's like a more in control Russell Westbrook. And I think he's a, lesser reckless version of Russell Westbrook. And I also think he's going to be a better shooter than Russell Westbrook. So Ja Morant, can he win a ship with the Grizzlies? Who knows? He's already a superstar right now, but Memphis does need to put some pieces around him. Next question on the Q&A coming in from Alonzo Harris. Warriors contenders next season if healthy. Fascinating question. I think Steph is still going to be at the peak of his powers. We've seen a little bit of a dip in Draymond Green's game, but there's no doubt he's still very impactful in terms of defense, strategy, smarts, intelligence, and all that stuff. And in the locker room, it really is all bridged on Klay Thompson. If Klay Thompson is healthy, I think the Warriors can contend next season. And I'm all here for it because when the Warriors were at the top of the NBA, they were must-watch television every single night. $10 super chat coming in from Levi, the first super chat today. Cheers to that. Almost happy hour. I'm going to have to drink a beer thanks to this super chat after the show. Levi asking, offseason mock trade. Mitch Rob, as in Mitchell Robinson, Frank Ntilikina, SRP for DeRozan, and Jacob Podol. I don't know if that's enough for either side. I think the Knicks, though, are going to make some moves, and they're desperate to be relevant again in the basketball discussion. They have a bunch of cap space, okay? They have a pretty good roster right now. I think they're very well coached thanks to Tom Thibodeau. So I think the Knicks are going to be hyper aggressive this offseason. I just hope that the Knicks don't do what they've done historically under James Dolan. And that's try to make the splash signing, the splash trade, or the sexy move, which causes them to overpay. As long as they are smart about their decisions under this new management, I like the future of the Knicks. I'm not sure that trade makes sense for either party. Shout out your city here on NBA Now. Get into the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. We're coming to you live from Dallas, Texas. I am from Philadelphia, so I'm going to shout out my city. But get into the comments. Let me know where you're watching from, and we'll give you some shout outs here before we head out of here in a few minutes. Let's go. Let's go. Shout out your city. Let's ride. Come on. Shout out your city in the comments. Let's see where you guys are watching from. We got somebody watching from Turkey. We have people watching from England. We have people from Ireland. Shout out your city. Let me know where you're watching from. Come on, get into the comments. Let me know. We're in Dallas, the Philippines. Appreciate that, Jer. I know you asked a question earlier and you gave me a grade on the mock. Lafayette, Tennessee, New Orleans, Richmond, Minnesota from Joseph, Bozeman, Montana, Philippines, Moscow, Russia. How about that? Appreciate all of you for giving us a shout out. So for all my Golden State Warriors fans out there, this is what I want you to do. Download the Newsbreak app and hit that follow button on your phones. If you go to chatsports.com/WarriorsNB, you can stay up to date with all of the latest happenings, not just on the sports scene. We're talking latest news, politics, pop culture, sports, everything that you want to know and keep up to date with. You can do that through the Newsbreak app. Go to chatsports.com/NB, download the Newsbreak app, and you will be able to stay up to date with everything happening. You can enter your zip code. You can enter your city. And also, hey, chatsports.com/WarriorsNB, and you can give us a follow on Warriors Today by Chat Sports. We have a separate page there on the Newsbreak app. You can do that as well. Basically staying up to date with everything that we're doing here. Newsbreak is a big sponsor of ours. If you support us, support them. Download the Newsbreak app on your phones by going to chatsports.com/WarriorsNB. We move forward with this Q&A mailbag from Jack Mello. What do the Celtics need to do to be serious contenders? I'm baffled, Jack Mello, as to what has happened to the Boston Celtics. We're talking about a team that made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. The question that somebody asked me a couple days ago, the Celtics run to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, was that a product of them being in the bubble, with having to deal with like less pressure, with no fan bases? I don't know. They were really good, and I like the core of the team. I think Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, like, they're two budding superstars. I think what they need a big man and a dynamic one, not just a guy who's going to like clog up the paint, but a guy who can stretch the floor. Let's see, maybe they address that through free agency or the draft. Next question coming from Elmac. Would the Pacers take Dinwiddie for Miles Turner in an offseason trade? It's not a bad deal. You look at the Brooklyn Nets roster. They do need a center because I think DeAndre Jordan's best days are behind him. Miles Turner is a younger option. He'll be more expensive, but Miles Turner for Spencer Dinwiddie, not a bad trade, especially if you're looking for a playmaking guard at the guard spot, which is what Spencer Dinwiddie is when he is fully healthy. He is currently coming back from a partially torn ACL. Here at Chat Sports, hey, we're closing in on 240,000 YouTube subscribers. So if you want more NBA news, rumors, coverage across the entire NBA, more mock drafts, this is what I want you to do. Hit that big red button down below. You can also subscribe by going to youtube.com/chatsportstv. If you're a fan of what we're doing here, if you enjoy and like what you're seeing, support us. How do you do that? You do that by subscribing and helping us get to 240,000 subscribers. So hit that big red button down below or go to youtube.com/chatsportstv. Let's get to another question. This one coming in from Jerry. Who should the Heat go for in the buyout market? I hear they are looking for another center. Will they bring Whiteside back? I think the Heat right now are actually pretty stacked. They went out and they acquired Trevor Ariza. They acquired Nemanja Bjelica. They acquired Victor Oladipo. I guess if you were to look at a need on that team, and they've kind of been below expectations for a variety of reasons record-wise, I think that they can make a run in the Eastern Conference playoffs. I guess if you're looking at a spot that they could upgrade at, it would be a center behind Bam. So maybe they look at a guy like Drummond, but I'm not sure there's going to be a reunion there. Hassan Whiteside is the name that I meant to mention there. Hassan Whiteside. I'm not sure if they go for a reunion there. I think it's a remote possibility if he could come in and back up Bam Adebayo at this point in his career. Won't demand that much salary. He can score down low on the low block and give you some rebounds as well. Next question coming in from Don Lovato. Can the Lakers do a sign and trade with Dennis to the Bulls? He's speaking of Dennis Schroeder right there. Maybe, well, actually, so Don, Dennis Schroeder is going to be a free agent after the season. So there is no need to do a sign and trade. And if you missed it, last Thursday was the NBA trade deadline. So no teams can make trades anymore. That deadline has passed. So after this season, according to reports, Dennis Schroeder is interested in the Bulls. Bulls interested in Schroeder. He could walk from LA, and then you might get your guy. Another question coming in from Jackson Fulton 27. What are three realistic trades for Karl Anthony Towns? I think Cat is going to stay with the Minnesota Timberwolves, especially if they land a top 3 pick. Now, you might be saying, it's time to rebuild. It's time to pull the plug. A lot has happened to Cat personally. He lost his mom due to COVID. His dad got COVID, I think. KAT also got COVID as well. So a lot has happened to him with the Minnesota Timberwolves. If I'm running that franchise, I'm holding on to him because I think that's the best opportunity to rebuild. So I think the Timberwolves are going to hold on to him. I don't see them trading him. Acri is coming in with a question. Appreciate that. What are some realistic destinations DeRozan could sign with? Maybe a veteran deal with a team like the New York Knicks. Maybe he goes to a title contender. Maybe he goes to a team where he doesn't have to be a primary option anymore. This point in his career, I know DeMar DeRozan is averaging almost 21 points per game, but the game of basketball has kind of passed him by. He doesn't shoot any threes. So he can't be your primary go-to option down the stretch, but as a secondary or third option for a contender next season, very interesting. Hey, maybe the Dallas Mavericks would be interested. We'll see. Nola Pelicans fan chiming in with another question as we round this out. Should the Pelicans trade Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams in the offseason? Steven Adams' contract is brutal. So too is Eric Bledsoe's. I'm not sure what team saw in Eric Bledsoe. Steven Adams is a guy who has been a really valuable and really strong force down low for OKC and New Orleans. I didn't understand why the Pelicans brought him in. A lot of experience, a lot of bulk down there in the front court. But if you're trying to grow young, go young and grow with your young players, didn't see why Steven Adams came in there. I think they could try to trade both of those guys, but the question is, what are you going to get back? James DeBono. Beal for Lauri Markkanen, Kobe White, and 2 first-round picks. I actually like that trade proposal. I think you might need to put another first-round pick in there for this reason. Bradley Beal, one of the best scorers that we've ever seen in the history of the NBA. I think the Washington Wizards would want much more in a package back for Bradley Beal if they were to ship him out. You can build with Markkanen. I like Kobe White. He can start or he can come in off the bench. I'd like to get to 3 first-round picks if I'm the Washington Wizards. Last question from Jur. D. Rose back to the Bulls to fill up the point guard gap. I don't see it happening. I think that ship has sailed. I don't think the Bulls are up for a reunion. I think they brought in Nikola Vucevic because they want to see if they can build a playoff contending team alongside Vucevic with Zach LaVine. I don't see why it would make sense to bring back D. Rose when other than Vooch, you're trying to build a young team. So I don't see a reunion happening there. In case you don't know, now you know. We go live every Friday at 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Central on NBA Now here on Chat Sports. So, hey, if you want to stay up to date with what we're doing, if you want to tune in to NBA Now live here on Chat Sports and join the party, you hit that subscribe button. It's the big red button down below. Go to youtube.com/chatsportstv. Turn those notifications on. That way, when we go live, you get notified, and then you can hop on board and join the show. One more question, or a couple more questions before we head out here. One more question. Who will win NBA MVP? Get into the comments and let me know. Nikola Jokic is number 1 in the MVP standings. And if you let me know who you think will win the NBA MVP, we'll give you some shout outs here in the comment section. Cam Savage actually brings up a good point. Karl Anthony Towns to the Knicks. If that's a destination, that'd be pretty cool because the NBA is in a much better spot when the Knicks are good. But let me know who will win MVP. Cat, hey, I don't think he's in that MVP discussion. Maybe in future years, maybe if he does go to a place like the New York Knicks, he could elevate his game a little bit. But let me know who will win the NBA MVP. I mean, since Embiid went out, since LeBron went out, we're looking at a really fascinating discussion that is really closely tied between Jokic, LeBron, Giannis, James Harden, Dame Lillard is in there. If Steph Curry vaults the Warriors up the Western Conference playoff standings, maybe Steph Curry will be in that playoff discussion as well. He was before he got hurt, but that is a possibility as well. So can't wait to see how the rest of the NBA season shakes out, how the NBA draft shakes out as we did our first mock draft today, and who wins the NBA MVP. So that'll do it for today's live show here on NBA Now. We're going to wrap things up. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. My first live show riding solo here. Make sure you subscribe to our main Chat Sports YouTube channel. We're closing in on 240,000 subscribers. All you got to do, hit that big red button down below or go to youtube.com/chatsportstv, and we'll see you next time.